so I made use of technology. I went onto Google and I typed names that I know of some of my late family members. And some information came up. Some of it was confirmation of what I already knew. But I was surprised to come across a picture that you had posted of my late great grandfather, Livingston Zimba, who I didn't know had gone to, what is the university again?
Lincoln University.
Lincoln University in America and played football, American football. What are the chances? Back in that time, he wouldn't have been allowed to play rugby. Yeah, there he is on the
Yes.
left. So when I saw that picture, I actually saw this picture on a link that led me to your profile on LinkedIn, and that's how you and I met. That's how I made the connection. I then reached out and asked for some more information. I was really just taking a chance because we have so little currently. All I have is what I had been told by my grandmother.
Join me, Jeremy Swick, on Into the Unknown, a podcast that delves into the personal journeys, stories, and experiences of individuals across diverse professions. As a historian by trade, I firmly believe that our personal histories shape our present and offer valuable insights into our paths ahead. With that being said, let's get into it. On this episode of Into the Unknown, I am joined with a very special guest, Lungi Pinda. How are you doing today?
Good. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast. We met not so long ago, and it's led us to this point.
I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And one of the things I love is technology. We're about 7 hours apart in the world right now.
I know, right? Yeah, it's technology's allowed us as human beings to connect with one another on a level that we wouldn't have been able to do or to connect in some years ago, and it's brought us some special moments over the years.
It really has. So where are you calling in from?
I'm in Johannesburg, South Africa.
It's one of those things. It's a beautiful area out there. I've not yet been out there, but I've heard nothing but amazing stories out there.
Oh yeah, you should come. You should come visit. It's beautiful out here. We have a very diverse. We are a very diverse nation. We have 11 official languages, and you find we call ourselves the Rainbow Nation. So we have multiple races. We have your Caucasians. We have Black African, and we also have what I now understand many American nationals take offense to a race called colored people. So colored people are actually a race in South Africa on their own. It's not a derogatory term, and they are not um, mixed race. They are a specific race on their own. Um, yeah, a lot of them are the descendants of the Khoi and the San um, back way back in time. Yeah.
It's interesting you mention that because as a historian and as we've talked a little bit, I play rugby as well. One of my gravitations was towards the World Cup team in the '90s, but learning more about people like Nelson Mandela and
Yes.
all of that. It really started to drive that history home for me, and learning more about South Africa. And as you mentioned, so many different official languages. It really is a melting pot of a wide group of people.
Yeah. Look, we've had a difficult past, and largely because of that melting pot. You've got people who come from different backgrounds, and somehow they have to find a meeting ground. And history made it very difficult for us all to find that meeting ground, or that the middle ground. But we have to give credit to people who heeded the call and took it upon themselves to fight for that development in our nation, so that we are one nation. You mentioned people like the late Nelson Mandela, and there are so many others. The late Oliver Tambo, the late Chris Hani, um, the late Joe Slovo. Um, I could name so many. The late Helen Suzman. Uh, there are so many, and they are not one race. They are not specifically Black African. You have Caucasians and some of the people that I have mentioned as well, who all fought for this one nation, um, and for freedom ultimately, and for liberation, for us all to live as one.
I couldn't agree more. I'd like to kick off the show and talk about the importance of networking. And this is one of those more fascinating stories that I've had on the show so far. How are we connected?
Yeah, so I I have been very interested in history and heritage. That then led to, given where I am as well, the stage of my life, wanting to understand who I am, where I come from, what I'm about. I then started researching my own personal history. And, we were talking about technology earlier on. So I made use of technology. I went onto Google and I typed names that I know of some of my late family members. And some information came up. Some of it was confirmation of what I already knew. But I was surprised to come across a picture that you had posted of my late great grandfather, Livingston Zimba, who I didn't know had gone to, what is the university again?
Lincoln University.
Lincoln University in America, and played football, American football. What are the chances? Back in that time, he wouldn't have been allowed to play rugby. Yeah, there he is on the
Yes.
left. So when I saw that picture, I actually saw this picture on a link that led me to your profile on LinkedIn, and that's how you and I met. That's how I made the connection. I then reached out and asked for some more information. I was really just taking a chance because we have so little currently. All I have is what I had been told by my grandmother, his daughter. So to come across some of these images and some of the information that you then sent to me when I reached out was really eye-opening, and to understand more, not just about him, because he also wrote a book about his father, um, who had who was also into theology. So his father was into theology. He was into theology. Livingston's grandfather as well was into theology. So that theology line only stopped in the generation of my grandmother. She was a hospital matron, and her brother was a medical doctor. So they left theology to go into medicine.
It's one of those things that it was just so impressive you had reached out. And again, this post was about this articles I wrote about 5 years ago when I was, middle pandemic, trying to still talk about history, talk about football, and your great grandfather and his teammate. It was a 1907 photo, and luckily, I always tell people write the names on either the back of the photograph or on the bottom because that gave me the tools I needed to then research a little bit more. And I found some on Lincoln University's
Uh-huh.
archives, and then I kept finding more and more and more, and I ended up having 6, 7, 8 articles, and we were able to connect, and then I was able to share some of those with you.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that because a lot of the information that you shared is information that our family, and I'm taking a huge guess, that we don't know because a lot of what I then discovered is stuff that I had never heard of and never even began to imagine. It's one thing as a family member being told about your forefathers because you get that information from a family point of view, from a family perspective. Nobody really talks about what they had done, what their contribution was to the world, and their journey and the traveling that I then got to understand as well. When you'd also have to understand a little bit more about South Africa back at the time, where a lot of what I then discovered in terms of the opportunities and the things that he had done and achieved, a lot of South Africans and specifically Black South Africans were never able to achieve and have those opportunities.
I couldn't agree more. It's one of those things, as we talked about previously before we recorded, to play a game that basically became American 2 years prior, 1905, with the legalization of the
Yeah.
Ford Pass. These guys were probably studying abroad and were encouraged in some capacity to join this American football team. And of course, someone had the thought to take their photos of, maybe not really knowing how unique of a moment this was, but the fact that their friends were
Mm.
playing football.
Yeah, and that's a beauty of, you know, technology again, because you never know, capturing that moment then led to this moment, that the connection of people from different parts of the world. Because at that time, whoever took that picture or captured that moment, I don't think they knew how far down the line that image would have an impact on people like you and I. But it did because it somehow bridged a gap and filled in a lot of missing links. Um, because also with the previous regime, they intend on suppressing and hiding and not allowing for information that would make people understand who they are, information that would enable or empower people. They would suppress such information from family, from people of color, to further their own sort of objectives of oppression. So I'm also a huge believer of, the universe works in mysterious ways because you can't avoid what the universe has in plan. If it is meant to be, it will be, and nothing is going to get in the way of that. So the man in charge or the power that is in charge kept that moment or ensured that that moment was captured to facilitate today.
Nearly 118 years later.
I didn't even count, but to hear that 118 years later, it's it's a proud moment for me, and I'm sure it will be for many of my family members too. It's I think it's quite unique because now I'm able to trace back because from the information that I've received, I've been able to go as far back as 1835, which not a lot of people in our country, not a lot of yeah, not a lot of people in our country have access to that goes that far back. That's yeah, it's a golden thing. It's treasure. And now I'm able to gather all of that information, pass it down to my children, and I can also, hold pictures up and say, this is who um, this is, and who they are in their lives. And today is 2025, and I can't imagine talking to my children maybe 5 or 10 years later saying this here is our history and it goes as far back as 1835. Their eyes are probably going to be as big as golf balls. Right now, they probably won't be able to comprehend what that means. They'll probably just be shocked at the fact that there used to be a year, 1835. But once it clicks when they're older, they'll understand the value of that because that's also something that they'll be able to pass down to their own children and grandchildren.
Couldn't agree more. So, I want to know a little bit more about you, your origin story. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I was born in Alice, where Livingston actually lived for some time, where he ran a church, where he studied. He went to a historic college and university that is based, they both based in that town. It's in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. And my grandmother, who then gave birth to my father, we lived in Alice for some time until I went to boarding school. After boarding school, I then went to university and I studied theatre and performance. I'm now an actor working in South Africa. I am married with 3 children, beautiful children, and I live in Johannesburg. I'm excited and proud to be a South African in the current times because we thought that the change that was in the 90s would only live would only exist at that time and the things that would be the only change that we would experience. But there has been so much that has happened, and we still experience so much today. Things are constantly changing, and for me to be a part of that is it's a privilege. I I enjoy spending time with my family, with my children. A very private person. I enjoy my company. I like myself. So as social as I am, I can go for a significant amount of time just being by myself. And living in my thoughts. And I also think that allows me to observe and digest the life and situations that I come across, because that has a huge influence in the work that I do. It's it's of great value in storytelling, because those experiences, when you tell stories, when you're on stage, or when you're in front of cameras, you only draw from experience to make the story believable and identifiable, relatable. And those experience, you don't necessarily have to live those experiences, but you can witness them, and you can feel them, and you can share them with people, and you can take the time to understand them. So I enjoy that a lot, and I enjoy reading, because, as you would now know, reading, you get to understand so much that, well, reading leads you to information that just facilitates growth. And for me, that's incredibly valuable, because that's something you can do on your own. You don't necessarily have to sit with someone and have conversations, although I enjoy that too. But reading, you can literally have conversations with yourself and God, and understand what that means for you and how that connects with you. I also enjoy talking to people and meeting people. I enjoy meeting genuine people. I like to think that I wear my emotions on my sleeve, because I like to open up unless I feel an emotional threat, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
An emotional, psychological threat. And for me, it's very easy to pick that up, because when you talk to someone, you feel someone's energy. And if the energy is not right, then I'm very quick to protect myself and distance myself from that interaction. But if I feel a welcoming energy, I sit, talk, and I ask similar questions. Tell me about yourself. Where do you come from? How did you, what led you to this point? What, give me your backstory. If, for instance, I'm sitting in an audition room today, sitting next to someone, our industry is very small, so we pretty much know everybody. So if I sit next to someone I've never met or worked with, then I'm interested to get to know that person, to get their backstory and find out what inspired them to be a storyteller as well, because that's also something that I enjoy talking about. Um, Telling people what inspired me. When I grew up, I never thought that I would be an actor. I always thought, I'd probably go into something like law, or follow in my grandparents' footsteps, go into medicine, engineering. My father is in engineering. So I always thought I would go into a safe career like that. I never thought I would find myself as a freelancing artist where, every day is different to the previous, and you never know what is going to happen. Comes with its challenges, but it's a complete thrill. It's one of the choices that I'm extremely grateful that I made, because I think I have a very unique life as a result of that.
In everyone's journey, we kind of make a decision not really knowing the outcome. Can you give me a time where you just went for it?
I remember this. I was in what was then Port Elizabeth, and today it's the name changed to Gqeberha. I was at interior design school. I was at interior design school because the intention was to go into architecture, study architecture. Unfortunately, I did not get into architecture, into the school of architecture. So the next best thing was interior design to collect some credits to make it easier for me to get into the school the following year. But round about September, August, September that year, I don't know what happened, but I suddenly decided that I was not going to go back to class the following day, that I was done. So I picked up my cell phone, I called my father, and I told him. He wasn't pleased, but I think he also understood that it was not a request. I was informing him. And I think for, for someone who was raised the way that I was, and to have garnered that much courage to say, I'm informing you, I'm not asking you. I understand what this means, not only for me, but for you too. But you can say no, but you need to understand that I'm not going back to where I was today and yesterday. And that was the shift for me. And it's also the same evening I started this very bad habit of smoking. So I left immediately after that call. I went down to a nearby shop. I bought myself my first packet of cigarettes, and I never looked back. And since then, the following year, I enrolled into a theater school. I then went to the same year. I went for an audition to get into that theater school. They started talking to me about things I had never heard of, mentioning names like words like a monologue. I thought to myself, what is that? I have no idea what that is. And this lady, her name was Marlene Peterser, gave me a piece of paper with writing on it, typing on it. Said, I need you to just memorize this and then say it. And I thought, okay, well then why call it a monologue? It's a speech. But that's what it is in theater. It's a monologue. So that was my baptism, to first understand that it's not a speech, it's a monologue. And I took the time to memorize the monologue, and I delivered it the best way, the way that I felt it should be delivered. It should be spoken. It should be spoken from a place of understanding. There needs to be a relationship with the text so that it feels natural, so that when someone else receives it, it's received authentically. And the following year, she accepted me. And that year was basically my preparation for university. I then went to drama school, UCT Drama School. And that's where I then enrolled and studied theatre and performance to train as a professional actor. I have now been a professional actor for almost 20 years. Yeah.
So that's really impressive. You kind of took that leap of faith, and of course informed your father, but also I think that also kind of adds fuel to the fire. Like, this better work. I just did this. I just left university, so I need to figure out a way to make this actually happen.
As many actors would tell you, it's not a choice to be an actor, it's a calling. And for me, the call came that evening, and I heeded the call. You don't decide. You know, as a little boy, I always watched television and I thought, my goodness, these people have such an amazing job. You know, they go to work and they just have fun. How nice would it be to just do that, you know, for a living? So I always had that interest, but I never felt that it was a possibility for me. So I suppose the spirit had already lit the fire in me. I had already been prepared for it. And so when the call came, it was easy for me to heed the call and be equipped with the tools of how to handle the communication with the people around me, to communicate that call. So, yeah, I think it's not, I don't think people make the decision to be an actor. Yes, you can tell yourself that you made the decision, but I don't necessarily think it is a decision one makes. It's a spiritual thing because when you tell stories that touch people and change people's lives in some way because those stories have to relate with people, like I said, you know, in a certain way, in a way that makes them feel like they are a part of a community.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's, as we mentioned, earlier in the podcast, talking about your interest in history and the love for reading and telling stories, even though it might not be your personal experience, developing ways to kind of share that emotion. I think with me in history, that's kind of one of the things that I've always gravitated towards with history. I feel like
Mhm.
Livingston, your great grandfather, like I knew him, like I studied him, I would have known him on the football field. And I think it's one of
Yeah,
those ways of seeing that perspective, even though it's not yours, just having the ability to admire and do your best to share that story.
yeah, yeah. And I think, I can't, you've put it perfectly. I can't add to that. It's a beautiful thing because when you allow yourself and you open your heart to all possibilities, whether it is history or the future, it it adds value to who you are and your self development.
Couldn't agree more. Title of the podcast: Into the Unknown. What are you working on? What do you have going on right now?
Right now, I have just finished shooting a telenovela. I had a support part in a telenovela that's currently running, and I'm back in the auditioning space. I'm also developing some concepts to tell stories. And funny you ask because currently a lot of people in our country have lost the connection between the past and today in terms of how did we come about who we are today. So the stories that I want to develop and that I'm currently developing are stories that bridge that gap for people to let them know how specifically Black Africans went from the 17 and the 1800s to 2025. And talking to Black wealth, making people understand that we have not always been poor, that at some point, a lot of our people were wealthy, educated, and were on a clear trajectory to building wealth, what today we see as wealth. Had some of the events that happened in our country not happened, there'd be so many more wealthy Black Africans. And so the stories then educate people and let them know where where it started, how it was going, where it broke down, what broke it down, and then getting ourselves back up again.
Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciated learning more about your story, your family story, and just again, just sharing another connection. Even though we're across the globe right now, it's been really great to get to know you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you including me in your podcast. I'm not much of a podcast person, like a interview person, like I mentioned to you. And so, it's been a pleasant experience for me, and thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
We'll talk soon. That was another fun episode of Into the Unknown. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if it provides you any value or entertainment, I would love if you shared it with others, liked, subscribed, and really just help the podcast grow. Again, tell a friend, tell a foe, just anyone who might enjoy hearing some stories of people's own journeys and what got them to where they are today. Till next time.